The animal control truck pulled into the Colbert County impound lot at 7:45 on a Wednesday morning in September, with a trailer full of bones that were still breathing. 18 bulls, standing in a 40-foot stock trailer that should have held 12. Their ribs were visible from the road, not the faint outline that shows on a thin animal in winter coat, visible the way furniture is visible through a sheet thrown over it. Every rib, every vertebra, hip bones jutting like handles on a body that had forgotten what muscle was for. The driver, a county animal control officer named Wesley Hines, backed the trailer to the unloading chute and opened the gate. The bulls came off the ramp one at a time. Slowly, not because they were calm, because they didn't have the energy to move faster. Their hooves hit the concrete with the hollow sound of animals whose body weight had dropped below the threshold where movement costs more calories than standing still. Wesley had been doing this job for 14 years. He'd seized dogs, cats, horses, goats, and once a pair of emus from a property outside of Muscle Shoals. But he'd never seized 18 bulls from a single operation, and he'd never seen cattle in this condition outside of a documentary about a foreign country where this kind of thing was supposed to happen. Not in Alabama. The property they came from was a 200-acre place south of Cherokee that had been running cattle for 30 years under a man named Phelps. Something had gone wrong about 18 months ago. The details were the usual tangle of personal collapse and drought. The cattle had been declining ever since. The cows had been sold or died. The bulls remained because nobody bought them, and Phelps stopped caring whether they lived or not. A neighbor finally called the county. The sheriff served papers. Wesley loaded the bulls. Dr. Carolyn Fitch, the county veterinarian, examined them that afternoon. 53. The kind of vet who doesn't soften findings because someone's feelings might get hurt. Body condition scores between 1 and 2 on the 9-point scale. Severe muscle wasting. Rumen function likely impaired. Standard refeeding would risk refeeding syndrome. Mortality rate 60 to 70%. Cost of a proper veterinary protocol for 18 bulls, $12,000 to $15,000. The county impound budget for the entire year was $8,000. Her recommendation, humane euthanasia for all 18 animals. The euthanasia was scheduled for Friday. But Wesley Hines made a phone call on Wednesday evening that changed everything. He called Buford Tate. Buford was 71 years old and had been raising cattle in Colbert County since he was 16, 55 years. He ran 110 cows on 360 acres of mixed pasture and hardwood bottom along the Tennessee River between Cherokee and Layton. His wife Margaret had died 6 years ago. His 2 sons lived in Huntsville and Birmingham and came home for holidays that didn't involve livestock, which eliminated most holidays. Buford was not a man who attracted attention. He didn't serve on committees, didn't attend cattlemen's meetings, didn't post on the internet. He ran his cattle, maintained his fences, and existed in the specific way that old farmers exist in small southern counties, quietly, consistently, and with an expertise that nobody recognized as expertise because it looked too much like stubbornness. Wesley called him because of something that had happened 4 years earlier. A horse rescue in Lauderdale County had seized 11 horses in condition similar to the bulls. The rescue couldn't afford veterinary-grade refeeding. Someone suggested Buford. He'd taken 3 of the horses, fed them back to health in 4 months using a method he'd learned from his father that involved no veterinary nutrition products, no electrolyte supplements, and no equipment more complicated than a hay ring and a water trough. The rescue director had told Wesley afterward. That old man did in 4 months what our vet said couldn't be done without $10,000 in medical supplies. He used hay and kudzu and thyme. That's it. Wesley told Buford about the bulls on Wednesday night. Buford listened. Then asked 3 questions. How thin? Worst I've seen. Body score 1 to 2. Ribs, hips, spine. Everything showing. How long have they been like this? Neighbor said it's been going downhill for 18 months. But the worst of it? Probably the last 5 or 6 months. The drought killed the pasture and Phelps stopped buying hay. When's the county putting them down? Friday. Buford was quiet for a while. Wesley could hear the television in the background, the sound of a house where one person lives and the TV runs for company. I'll take them, Buford said. All 18? All 18. Buford. The vet says they'll die. Refeeding syndrome. Their rumens can't handle. I know what refeeding syndrome is. My daddy taught me how to bring cattle back from starvation in 1968 when we lost 30 head to a drought and couldn't afford hay. I was 16. He showed me what to do with what we had. I've done it 4 times since. I haven't lost an animal to it yet. Wesley presented Buford's offer to the commissioner on Thursday morning. Dr. Fitch objected. He's not a veterinarian. He doesn't have the training. If those bulls die on his property, the county is liable. Wesley argued the math. If they die here Friday, we pay for euthanasia. If they die there, we pay nothing. He signs a waiver. The commissioner signed the transfer. Buford backed his trailer to the impound lot on Thursday afternoon, loaded 6 bulls at a time, 3 trips. The bulls walked onto the trailer the way they walked everywhere, slowly, carefully, conserving energy they didn't have. By dark, all 18 were on Buford's property. He'd cleared a 10-acre bottom pasture along the river and divided it into 3 paddocks with temporary electric fence. 6 bulls per paddock. Enough space to move, but not enough to waste calories walking. Then he started the protocol. His father, Hollis Tate, had called it bringing them back. Not a veterinary term, a farm term. The knowledge had been passed to Buford in the drought of '68 when Hollis was 43 and Buford was 16, and 30 head of cattle were starving because the hay money ran out in August and the rain didn't come until November. The protocol was simple. So simple that Carolyn Fitch, when she heard about it later, said it shouldn't have worked. Refeeding syndrome happens when a starving animal gets too much energy too fast. The sudden insulin response crashes the electrolytes. Heart failure, respiratory collapse, death within 72 hours. The solution is slow. The rumen needs time to rebuild. The gut needs time to heal. The body needs time to remember what food is. Day 1 through 5, water only. Clean water, available constantly. Nothing else. The bulls drank. Some of them drank for 5 minutes straight. Their kidneys were compromised. Carolyn had been right about that. But hydration was the first step. Before you feed the body, you feed the water. Buford sat on an overturned bucket in the paddock and watched them drink. He'd done this before. Knew that the hardest part of bringing them back was the first 5 days when you had to watch starving animals and not feed them. Every instinct said, give them hay, give them grain, give them something, but something too soon would kill them faster than nothing. Day 6 through 14, Kudzu. This was the part that Hollis had taught him, and the part that nobody believed until they saw it work. Kudzu grows on every fence line, every ditch bank, every abandoned lot in northern Alabama. The vine that ate the South. An invasive species imported from Japan in the 1870s that spreads at a foot per day in summer and covers everything it touches. It's also a high-quality forage. Kudzu leaves contain 14 to 18% crude protein, comparable to alfalfa. The stems are digestible. The water content is high, 70 to 80% in fresh leaves, which provides additional hydration. And the fiber is soft enough that a damaged rumen can process it without the mechanical stress that dry hay causes. Hollis Tate had known this in 1968, not from a research paper, from observation. During the drought, his starving cattle had broken through a fence and eaten the kudzu growing along the creek bottom. The ones that ate the kudzu survived. The ones that didn't. Hollis remembered. And he taught Buford. Buford cut kudzu from the fence lines along the river every morning before dawn, armloads of it, fresh, green, dripping with dew that made the vines heavy enough to fill a pickup bed with 3 loads. He spread it in the paddocks, not in piles, in thin lines across the ground, so the bulls had to walk short distances to eat. Walking was exercise. Exercise rebuilt muscle, but only enough walking to graze, not enough to burn what little reserves they had left. The first morning he spread the kudzu, the bulls stood at the far end of the paddock and stared at it. They didn't approach for 20 minutes. Their rumens were so empty, so damaged, that the smell of fresh forage triggered caution instead of hunger. A starving animal doesn't rush to food. It approaches like a person who's been lied to approaches a promise, wanting to believe but expecting to be disappointed. Then the brindle bull in paddock 2 took a step. Then another. He lowered his head to the vine and sniffed it for a long time before he took the first bite. Chewed slowly, swallowed, stood there processing not just the forage, but the experience of eating something green and alive after months of nothing. Within an hour, all 18 were grazing the kudzu lines, slowly, carefully, their jaws working with the deliberate rhythm of animals whose bodies were remembering a function they'd nearly forgotten. Buford sat on his bucket and watched. He didn't celebrate, didn't call Wesley. This was day 6. There were 84 more days to go. And in bringing them back, celebrating early was the same as counting calves before they hit the ground. A good way to curse the outcome. The bulls ate the kudzu. Slowly at first, their rumens were nearly empty of the microbes that break down forage. The first days of kudzu produced minimal digestion. The feed passed through partially unprocessed. But each day, the microbial population rebuilt. Each day, the digestion improved. Each day, the bulls extracted a little more energy from the green vines that grew on every neglected acre in Colbert County. Day 15 through 30, kudzu plus grass hay. Buford introduced hay gradually. 1 flake per bull per day the first week, 2 flakes the second. The hay was low quality, late-cut fescue that most cattlemen in the county wouldn't feed to a goat. But low quality was the point. High-quality hay has too much energy for a recovering rumen. The starvation protocol required calories to increase at a rate the metabolism could match. Low-quality hay at limited volume was the throttle that kept the engine from flooding. Buford checked the bulls twice daily, 5:30 in the morning, 5:30 in the evening. He walked each paddock, looked at each animal, not with instruments or lab work, with his eyes, the way his father had looked at cattle in '68. What he watched for was specific. Ear position, ears forward meant engaged, ears drooping meant declining. Eye brightness, dull eyes meant dehydration or infection, clear eyes meant the body was functioning. Manure consistency, too loose meant the rumen was overwhelmed, too firm meant not enough water, the right consistency meant the protocol was working. He adjusted by animal, not by group. If one bull was responding faster, he got an extra flake of hay. If another was lagging, Buford pulled back to kudzu only for another week. Wesley drove out every Friday to check. The first 2 visits, he couldn't see any difference. The bulls still looked like death standing up. But Buford showed him things. See his ear? Buford said, pointing at a brindle bull in paddock 2. Last week that ear was down. Today it's forward. That's his nervous system coming back online. He's paying attention to the world again. A bull that's dying stops paying attention. A bull that's living starts looking around. By day 30, Wesley could see it. Weight was returning. Not dramatically. Not the transformation that movies show in a montage. Slowly. A pound here, 2 pounds there. The ribs that had been furniture under a sheet were becoming furniture under a blanket, still visible, but covered. Dr. Fitch came for an inspection at day 45, required by the transfer agreement. She walked the 3 paddocks with her clipboard and the expression of a veterinarian who had recommended euthanasia and was now looking at animals that should have been dead 6 weeks ago. She examined each bull. Her notes told a story her recommendation hadn't predicted. 14 of 18 showing marked improvement. Body condition scores up from 1-2 to 3-4. Rumen function restored. 2 critical but stable. 2 improving slowly. 0 dead. 45 days. 0 dead. No veterinary nutrition products. No electrolyte drips. No IV fluids. No pharmaceuticals of any kind. Kudzu, grass hay, water, and a 71-year-old man who walked the paddocks twice a day and read ear position the way a doctor reads a chart. Carolyn sat in Buford's kitchen afterward drinking coffee with her professional composure slightly dented. Mr. Tate, I recommended euthanasia. 60 to 70% mortality with proper veterinary intervention. You've had 0 mortality with no veterinary intervention. How? Buford refilled her cup. Slow. I went slow. That's all. Carolyn looked at her clipboard. You know what frustrates me? I went to vet school for 8 years. I've practiced for 25 more. And a protocol a farmer learned from his father in '68 is outperforming anything I would have prescribed. Buford sat down. Doc, your protocol would have worked too. It just costs more. Electrolytes and IV fluids do the same thing Kudzu does. Rehydrate, provide low-level nutrition, rebuild the rumen gradually. You do it with machines, I do it with plants. The animal doesn't know the difference. Carolyn stared at him. That's annoyingly accurate. Buford almost smiled. My wife used to say the same thing. By day 90, 16 of the 18 bulls had reached body condition score 5. Moderate, functional, the kind of condition where a bull can breed cows and maintain himself on pasture without supplemental feed. The remaining 2 were at 4. Thin, but improving. None had died. 16 functional bulls on a property that the county had been ready to write off as a disposal cost. Wesley asked the question that needed asking. What now? Buford couldn't keep 18 bulls. He ran his own herd bulls. 2 registered Angus, more than sufficient. But in a county where the drought had thinned herds and forced ranchers to sell breeding stock they couldn't afford to replace, a functional bull at a reasonable price was worth more than a catalog number. The county extension agent put out a notice. Within 3 weeks, 14 of the 18 bulls had sold to operations across northwest Alabama, $800 to $1,500 per head. Total, $16,400. Buford kept the money for exactly 1 day. Then he drove to the county commission office and set a check on the commissioner's desk. What's this? The commissioner asked. $16,400. From the sale of the bulls you were going to put down. That covers your impound budget for the next 2 years and the cost of the disposal you didn't have to pay for. Call it a refund on the euthanasia you didn't need. The commissioner looked at the check, then at Buford, then at the check again. Mr. Tate, you spent 90 days feeding and caring for 18 animals. You used your own land, your own hay, your own time. And you're giving the money back? It wasn't about the money, it was about the bulls. They deserved a chance. The county couldn't give them one. I could. Now it's done. He walked out, drove home, fed his cows, checked his fences, went to bed at 8:30 the way he did every night. Buford kept 4 of the 18, 2 brindles and 2 blacks that he said reminded him of cattle his father had run in the 60s. He put them in the bottom pasture where the kudzu grows thick along the river, the same kudzu that saved their lives. They graze it now voluntarily. The vine that nobody wants feeding the bulls that nobody wanted. Carolyn revised her recommendations to the county the following year. Before any seized livestock are euthanized, the county should first seek qualified private placement with experienced individuals. She told Wesley the reason privately. Because a 71-year-old man with a bucket of kudzu taught me that my clinical assessment wasn't wrong about the medicine. It was wrong about the math. The math didn't account for Buford Tate. And maybe that's the problem. We measure the cost of the tools, but not the value of the person holding them. Buford turned 72 this spring. He still runs 110 cows, still checks fence every Saturday, still gets up at 4:30 and sits on the porch with coffee that Margaret used to make, and he now makes himself not as good, but the same cup, the same time, because routine is the skeleton that holds a man up when the muscle of companionship is gone. The 4 bulls he kept are in the bottom pasture most mornings, grazing, gaining, standing in the Tennessee River fog with coats that are thick and bodies that are round, and the specific look of animals that came back from somewhere they weren't supposed to return from. Buford watches them from the porch sometimes, doesn't say anything, doesn't need to. He did what his daddy taught him, nothing more, nothing less. And 18 bulls that a veterinarian and a commissioner and a budget said should be dead are standing in a pasture in Alabama, breathing morning air that smells like river water and kudzu. The vine that ate the South turned out to be the thing that saved 18 lives that everybody else had already counted out. And the man who knew it learned it at 16 from a father who didn't have a degree or a protocol or a budget, just cattle and kudzu, and the patience to go slow when everything around him said go fast or don't go at all.